So Major League Baseball, with a new head of the MLB Players Association by the name of Bruce Meyer, interim executive director of the Baseball Players Association. This comes one day after the last director, Tony Clark, was forced to resign over a reported inappropriate relationship. So, yikes. Yeah, that's not good. But this comes at a really critical time. This otherwise would be like, okay, whatever. But this is actually pretty significant because there's going to be likely a lockout next season. Not this season, but next season for Major League Baseball. And why is that? Because we're coming at a crux. We're going to be having some negotiations, a new contract labor agreement coming up next season, which we've got a big topic at hand, and that is a salary cap. The MLB and the owners, they're going to be pushing for a salary cap in the next contract negotiations, while the players, they are going to be pushing back. The players do not want a salary cap for obvious reasons, because they can make significantly more money with no salary cap. I mean, of course, look at the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are the most infamous example. But that's going to be the crux of it. And I just have the feeling like this is going to be messy, and we're going to be headed towards a long lockout, unfortunately. I don't see this being a thing that comes to a quick resolution, and we start even next season on time. You know, I envision a thing where we delay the start of the regular season and, you know, God forbid, hopefully we don't miss the majority of the season. That would be completely dreadful. But that just looks like the case of it. And the reports of this past offseason with Kyle Tucker, who was one of, if not the biggest fish out there in the free agent market. You know, heavily linked to the Mets, heavily linked to the Blue Jays, but where does he end up at the end of the day? The Dodgers. So that makes it now 4 off seasons in a row that the Dodgers land, if not the biggest name on the free agent market, they at least land one of, if not multiple, of the biggest free agent names out there. So, yeah, this offseason, they already got 2 of the biggest names. They got Kyle Tucker and they also got Edwin Diaz, that closing pitcher from the Mets, one of the best closers in the game. 2 big acquisitions right there. And then look back to last offseason. The Dodgers end up with Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow. They got another big international free agent pitcher from Japan, Roki Sasaki. You know, several big guys there. And then I believe Yamamoto, was that last season or was that the last offseason? It's the previous offseason. It's hard to keep track at this point because the Dodgers keep landing these top guys. But regardless, you had the year before that, the huge, historic Shohei Ohtani contract, $700 million, which the majority of that deferred, which that's another topic in itself. And then Yamamoto, of course, I believe that was the same offseason with Ohtani. And don't forget, the year before that, who do they get? They get Freddie Freeman. So again, 4 off seasons in a row now that the Dodgers land one of, if not the biggest name out there on the free agent market, if not multiple. of the biggest free agents out there. And, I mean, one argument, at least in terms of the Dodgers, is, don't hate the player, hate the game. There is nothing that says they can't do this. So they're playing by the rules as currently constructed. And can you fault them for it? No. At the end of the day, teams are going to do whatever it takes to win. Now, of course, based on different owners, different budgets, teams are going to have different ideas of what it takes to build a winning team in any sport. But regardless, the Dodgers have made it clear that by any means necessary, they are going to acquire as much talent as possible and, not consistently at least be a World Series contender. This is now 3 seasons in a row, which, of course, the last 2 seasons, Dodgers winning the World Series. But we're coming into a 3rd season now where it legitimately is World Series or bust. If the Dodgers even make the World Series and lose the World Series, that is a failure. Winning the World Series is the absolute, that's the only thing that can happen with this Dodgers team for the season to be considered a success. That's the level of talent that these Dodgers teams have. And another note on deferred money, which, of course, teams do employ. As a matter of fact, I think the Tigers actually are doing that with some of Justin Verlander's contract. Now, it's not like Justin Verlander is getting Shohei Ohtani dollars or anything like that. But I am of the opinion that when you sign a guy to a contract, you have to pay out that contract during the life of that contract. I think deferred payments, it seems like cheating to me. I think the MLB definitely needs to try to get something done in terms of the deferred payments because, for example, Shohei Ohtani, what was that, 10 years, $700 million? He should be getting an annual salary average of $70 million per season. And at the end of that 10 years, barring some sort of a buyout at the end of that, and not specifically with Shohei, but any player in general, barring a buyout, you should have to pay that full money in that full time span of that contract. I'm not on board with these deferrals. Now, if that ever changes in the MLB, I would expect, the Dodgers or other teams that have deferred contracts, I would imagine there's going to be like a grandfathered in exemption for those specific contracts. But I'm of that opinion that you need to be paying a guy during the life of that deal, not after, unless at the end of the deal last year or two, you decide to do a buyout. Then if you want to defer the payments down the road, whatever. But that's a big issue that I have, is deferred payments. And I can see why people are upset with the Dodgers. I despise the Dodgers, but at the same time, don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't be mad at the Dodgers for going out and getting all of these top free agents. Get mad at Major League Baseball for, allowing a system to where you have a team that has virtually unlimited money, or at least has owners that are willing to spend unlimited money to get as many of these top free agents as possible. That's the angle that I'm coming at this with. And you can see why a lot of other owners are enraged that the Dodgers were able to get Kyle Tucker this past offseason, which for many owners was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, nope, this is getting too out of hand. As I mentioned, 4 straight off seasons where the Dodgers land at a top, if not the top free agent. But keep in mind as well, the Dodgers, when you think about it, are really the exception, not the rule, when it comes to these top dollar teams. If you remember, the New York Mets are another team that have an astronomical salary. They missed the playoffs last year. Not even good enough to make the playoffs. And keep in mind, I think 2 seasons before that, that was the year that they had Max Scherzer, they had Justin Verlander, they had all this hype going into the season. Their owner, going all in. And at that time, the Mets were looked at as like, what are these guys doing? Like, is this good for baseball? But then it turns out the Mets ended up being terrible. And they actually had to trade some of those guys out, specifically Justin Verlander. He actually got traded back to the Astros that season. So those are just some recent examples of why that's more the, shelling out all this money and getting several top free agents and stuff. That's not always going to guarantee you a winning team, even a playoff spot. And even before the last, really since COVID, last 5-6 years, even the Dodgers were a team like that had a huge payroll every single year, but they were having very early flameouts in the postseason. So these current Dodgers, now obviously it's to an extent where it's crazy. Again, 4 seasons in a row you land the top free agent or several of the top free agents. I mean, it is kind of crazy. Some of the past examples, specifically with the Mets or even some of those previous Dodgers teams, did not have a run like that. And especially it certainly helps when one of those players are acquiring the best two-way baseball player in modern baseball history. In Shohei Ohtani, you're pretty much getting a 2-in-1 player, with him being not only one of the best hitters in the sport, but one of the best pitchers in the sport when he is healthy. So that definitely helps. I think the current iteration of the Dodgers, a little bit of an outlier in terms of spending in that regard. But again, I reiterate the point. Throwing mass amounts of money at your team is not a guaranteed way to have a winning team. I think at the end of the day, it starts with the draft, like any sport. It starts with the draft. You have to draft well. You have to hit on your draft pick, especially in baseball. I like to look at the really baseball, hockey, and the NFL and football. The first 3 rounds are key. You have to hit on your draft picks in the first 3 rounds of the draft. And then in the NBA, really the first round. You want to get your solid guys in the first round, especially if you're a lottery team in the NBA, because there's only 2 rounds of the draft in the NBA. But with baseball, hockey, and football, you have to hit on your draft picks in the first 3 rounds. And you have to consistently have talent coming in. That's when droughts happen, is when you're not drafting well, A, or B, you're trading a bunch of draft picks, or not draft picks, but recently drafted players. You got young prospects that you're trading away to try to bolster your current roster. That can hurt you in the long run, because then all of a sudden, if your team starts going downhill and then you have a barren farm system, then that's when you're going to go through a lull like the Tigers went through, that they finally have come out of. They finally have a solid team with even more great young prospects on the way. That's how you build a sustainable product on the floor. And that's even what the Dodgers were doing, look back even 10, 15 years ago. A lot of the key players on that Dodgers team at that time were homegrown. Now, today, that's a completely different story. Some of those other guys, have had to move on, while the Dodgers bring in different guys, different top guys. So the majority of the key difference makers, key players on the Dodgers are acquired in free agency. That again, that's an outlier. But even look at other teams with big payrolls. Yankees, Aaron Judge. It's a homegrown guy. Your franchise guy. That's a homegrown guy. Look at the Blue Jays. made the World Series this past season for the American League. Top two guys, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette, homegrown guys. So it all starts with the draft. The Dodgers are an exception to the rule with their recent run, but don't hate the game, or don't hate the player, hate the game. So what happens with these labor negotiations potentially for next season? I think that we're probably going to be getting a lockout. MLB and the owners are going to be pushing for a salary cap. Players, obviously, for payment reasons, do not want a salary cap. We're also, one more point here with this, and it's not just the top spenders that are a problem here with implementing a salary cap. You need to have a salary floor as well, because for all of the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees of the world, you have teams like the Rays or the Pirates or the Reds that notoriously are cheap, that, never really pay anybody. And they have minimal payrolls. And at the same time, we have seen successful teams as a byproduct of that. You've seen the Rays, for instance, make a recent run to the World Series with a shoestring budget, relying on players that they drafted. So, you have results across the board in terms of payrolls. It doesn't necessarily correlate to success. What does correlate to success is drafting well and consistently having a good farm system and having good prospects going through up your systems, and you have a very strong overall roster as a result. So do I despise the Dodgers? Yes. But at the same time, I don't blame them, because they are playing. They have an owner that's willing to spend unlimited money, and that's where the league is at. But if the league goes to implement a salary cap, I think they need to address the other end of the spectrum, the notoriously cheap teams as well. That needs to be fixed as well. It's not just the guys at the top that are the problem. It's the guys at the bottom in terms of payroll that are a big issue as well. But anyways, with the new MLB Players Association interim director, Bruce Meyer, coming in at a very interesting time with these labor negotiations coming up in the next offseason. And yikes, could be pretty brutal.
If you missed today's installment of On the Docket, podcast it at foxsports1019.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to tune in live weekdays at noon on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.